Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
Dobrze, good. How are you, Ryan?
I am also doing dog's breath, as he said, clearly and loudly. As we all know on here, Bartek is a speaker of the dog language, and I'm a speaker of the cat language. Meow.
I speak PS and you speak cot.
That's... Yes, I speak cots. Is that actually Polish for cat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's very cute. Is it spelled with a K?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
K-O-T.
K-O-T. And what was dog again?
PS, which is spelt like pies.
Okay. I like
so
that.
now you'll remember how to spell dog in Polish.
Oh, I will. Uh-oh, I've ordered some dog on my shopping list.
It kind of sounds like...
Whoopsies.
It also kind of sounds like the letters PS. PS.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like you're going to say Pisces soon. But we spit and polish because we're both spitting gentlemen, and one speaks cat, one speaks dog, but neither of us understand Czechoslovakian, but one of us kind of does because they speak the language of Poland, which I guess is smart Czech, according to someone, not me.
No, I said the opposite where it's like, Czech is silly Polish.
Yes, and that's why you speak smart Czech, I guess, according to you.
That implies that Czech's the base.
Oh, you don't want that to be the implication.
Yeah. I actually don't know the history of the two languages.
Yeah, where's the base? Where's the base of your language? You think you're the pillar of
this is like
the European language? No?
I almost spoiled the film we did forever ago, but let's not do that.
Let's not do anything rash here. Let's have a powwow about some pictures. We talk about movies that have come recommended. We recommend movies, and you, the listening people, can recommend movies. Each week, we go over a film that has come from somebody, whether it is Bartek, whether it's myself, or yes, you, the listening people, and this is someone's recommendation. Whose recommendation is it, Bartek? Is it mine? Is it yours?
It's a YouTube commenter, but I cannot remember their
handle.
I forgot to look it up. Do you have it on you?
I don't have it on me, but we are talking about a listening people's recommendation, and it spawned from our want and need for more Czech films. If you are a long-time listener of this podcast, you will know that Bartek and I have a deep love, affinity, and affection for films from the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia when it was... A lot of the films we watched was when it was Czechoslovakia.
I think we've done 4 at this point.
Yes.
This is our 5th one.
And we love them, and we like to discover new ones. And yet it's also hard because we don't know what ones are worth checking out and what ones are available to watch in a way that we can understand and appreciate it. And what is the film that we are talking about today, Bartek?
Okay, correct me if I get the title wrong, but it's How to Drown Dr Mráček the Lawyer.
That's correct.
From 1975.
That's correct. 1975. This film is a very interesting one, but how can people find it? How can people find a version that can be read with English subtitles? I looked up, apparently, according to some places, you can buy a copy in the US through Amazon Video. I don't know if that's still the case, because, you know, sometimes you look this stuff up and it says that, and then when you actually go to look at, it's not available anymore because...
Yeah, it's outdated info.
But I don't know if that's true or not, but we found a version online through some means.
Yeah, I found one on some shoddy Russian website.
I found that exact same copy by typing in this movie and then searching videos function on Google, and it took me to that site immediately. There is a version of this film on YouTube, but without any subtitles. It is in the given form that it came out in.
Yeah, there were a couple of Czech films like that when I was searching, where it's like,
That is the case, but it is available for people to watch out there through some apparently legitimate means and through some nefarious means, and
don't say nefarious, just say Russian.
Sure. The Czechs and the Poles have something in common. We love Russia. We have a great history with them. Oh my God.
For people that don't know, the website that I found, it was a .ru. That's why I'm saying Russians.
Oh yeah, it was a site through Russia. So Let's just dive on in and talk about this film.
Dive? What are you talking about?
We shall get into the details of it, but how would you give people the basic rundown of this?
Um, for a basic idea of the sort of tone that this story has, it's very much a mix of like a classical fairy tale, but in a then modern setting. Like this is set in just like a town or a little city. But there's a lot of supernatural characters of a certain type. They're water sprites. And this is quickly established in the film that this is a world where water sprites live among people in regular communities, and each like, around the world there's various domains that are run by an excellency, your
Yes, there's a
excellence.
hierarchy, there's a system in
Yeah,
place.
it's basically that these creatures are immortal, they're living in the human world, and they're keeping it a secret. And the plot of this film involves a threat that's going to uh, reveal that this one is living in this town because a lawyer is doing his job, and if they kill the lawyer, then that job won't get done and their secret will be kept.
Yes, that is the base premise of things, and
Yep.
things spiral out into mania and comedy of errors and slapstick and misunderstandings and
A lot
hijinks.
of setup and payoff. Yeah.
There's a lot of lore.
Yeah, that's what I meant
There's
by
a lot of
classical fairy
rules.
tale, because there's so many rules and they have like very specific weaknesses
Hmm.
and certain like human vices, like losing your virginity or having like a blood transfusion or
Or
something.
eating meat,
Yeah, will
eating
will
blood
rob
meats.
you of your immortality, and it's something that they fear. It's very set rules, and it
Yes,
feels very classical.
and then natural forms are forms of sea life, of water-based life, like
Yeah.
a fish or a tortoise or this or this or this. They go through some. We see them transform into these things. We see them be humans as well, and so it's absolutely insane. Give it a watch. We are going to now get into the fullest of the spoilers and details, but as stated, neither of us had seen this before.
Hmm.
I had heard of this. This has been on my watch list. When going through the Czech films that we have, you get the recommendations from IMDb and other sites, as well as just from people like YouTube commenters who say, check this out, check that out. And there's many familiar names of movies because the Czech movies, especially from the 70s, have these absurd names
Yeah,
like this.
they remind me a lot of a lot of like more recent or in the past decade and a bit like anime titles for like isekai shows where it's like incredibly long and specific titles. Like that time I got reincarnated as da 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 da. And it's like a weird, usually like weird statements like how to drown Dr. Mráček, the lawyer, or pass me that pen, Mráček, or something like that.
And we've done a couple with those naming conventions, like, Gentlemen, I Killed Einstein, and A Dinner for Adele has like 40 titles that we could list
What
off.
was the name
And
of the last one we did with the Hitler?
oh,
Tomorrow I'll scold myself with tea or
yeah.
something.
Tomorrow I'll wake up and scold myself with tea.
Yeah, like these weird statements that most of the time aren't really direct quotes, but like
Their plot
relevant.
element, like how this film is a plot element.
Yeah.
This is what the movie's about. We need to drown the lawyer. That's what the movie's about. I love it. I think it's so charming.
I know,
but the poster is the thing that I remembered the most because the poster for this film, when you look it up, is of this very 1970s art style of a goldfish, but the eye of the goldfish is a photograph of a woman's eye, like cut into it, and that is what we will reveal is our lead female character. And so that's a neat little poster to give you an idea of what the film is actually about, but without giving it away. And I thought it's a memorable poster. It's like, okay, that one's interesting. What's that one? It's a fish, something about a fish. Okay, I wonder. It's got drown, and we've got to drown this guy. Okay, so something's happening here, water related. But
yeah, I
knew nothing of the plot or the premise or anything other than like I'm aware of the title and I've seen the poster and it's just been in the ether of the films.
I walked in pretty blind, so when you had that introduction sequence, the opening credits, where there was like all these pictures of cartoony sea life, and there was like one shot that gave like the alternate title, which is mentioned something about water sprites.
Hmm.
I thought like, oh, that's weird. That sounds like a fantasy thing. And what's with all these fish? So when the film
And
started
mermaids
and
and
it revealed itself like, oh, we're immortals, we're water sprites. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize this was a fantasy film.
there's a lot in those opening credits in the cartoon that really transpires in the film. We see people coming out of taps and grabbing people. We
Hmm.
see transformations of from fish to people. We see one of them become huge. We get a lot
Yeah,
that's
and
told
just to
there.
remind our listening people, this is a live action film
This is a live
from the
action film.
70s.
It has a cartoony opening with a song, like
Mm.
fully fledged song dedicated to this movie's existence. Then it's not a musical. We don't. I was really excited for it to be one because I saw credits for
Yeah, and the song was
songs and
catchy
lyrics.
too.
Yes, it was very catchy. It was very good. Uh, but man, I walked in not knowing the plot or the fantasy elements either, and as you said, you start to pick up all this fantasy. Oh, ooh, we haven't had a fantasy one
Yeah, it's been
before.
mostly sci-fi.
It's been mostly sci-fi or contemporary day life
Mm.
stuff, and so what's a fantasy going to be? And I want to say too, like during October spooky month, I kept pestering you to be like, what's Polish, folklore and fantastical stuff, and you were like, I'm not too sure, like, oh, what's the deal, and like, what are Polish fantasy stories and all this, and then the first Czech film we get after that is like, he's like a Czech
Mm.
folklore fantasy
Yeah, I don't
thing,
know
and like,
how.
I don't know if it's like, I
Yeah, how
don't,
Czech is it? But yeah,
but they,
it's.
but like with all of their movies, they make it very tied to
It definitely
the location and
it
the
definitely
culture.
feels European. Yeah, because and they keep like. Oh, I think all the other like. There's a scene where the excellency of the film goes to like a meeting of international excellencies, and they all seem to be like European.
Oh yes, of course. And even if it's not real, which I'm not too sure what water sprites are
Mm.
in relation to folklore and stuff, but it's one of those things where it feels very European
Yeah.
folklore. As Australians, we understand there is a difference between that because Australian culture, especially Indigenous culture, has their look on life with stuff like this, and it's very different to how Europe does it or how Asia does it or how so on and so forth. So yes, this feels very European in its
Mm.
fantasy, the fantastical
Yeah, and
sensibilities.
like elemental creatures,
Hmm.
seems to be a pretty widespread thing.
It is. So what did you feel about this movie?
I had a pretty good time with it. Like I think you went through the same thing. The subtitles that we had weren't perfect. There was a bit of like sync issues. So it did kind of slow it down a little bit, but yeah, I actually had a really good time. There were a lot of setups and payoffs that I wasn't expecting. Like there are these two plots happening at the same time, and the way that they eventually intersect, like the laughs felt very natural coming out of that. And when I did start dawning on me that this is a fantasy film, I really appreciated how casual it was about all of this stuff being normal. So I remember one of the scenes that really highlighted that is it's the first time that they go into the water.
Mm.
The friends like of the family members, the servants all meet up. They're talking, they're walking. They walk down the stairs up to like the bank of the river, and then they just walk into the water as if they're still just going down the stairs. There's like no conscious thought about it. They're just walking in there, and it was very natural. And the way that we were introduced to a lot of other things, it just comes out naturally through the dialogue. And it really, yeah, showed me that, yeah, this is the film that you're in for. And the more you learn about it, the more it feels cohesive.
I agree. The elements that are obviously otherworldly are presented in a very natural, matter of fact way where it is surreal to see these people in these pinstripe suits and ties and lovely dresses just walk into like a river and treat it like there is nothing happening, like they're just
Mm.
walking,
Yeah.
they're the physical acting, the reactions of the people, like really top-notch stuff, and the filmmaking, because you can tell at times if you're being observant of like, oh, I see how they've kind of faked this to make it
Yeah, I
look like
noticed there was
this.
one late on in the film where it's like, oh, that's why he's not wet and he is.
Yes, but they did make it a rule of each time they weren't wet when they
Mm.
came out, and it was a,
Yeah,
it was
and
a
they never-
fun detail, and they never really talk about it.
They never really talk about it, but then when one of the guys becomes wet, he's like, oh, how rude, you're still wet. And it's like, oh, okay, my mind wasn't crazy. I'm like, how are they not wet? Are they just not acknowledging it? Am I not noticing
It's
that
a
they're
part
actually
of
wet?
their magic,
Yeah.
I guess.
And that was a really cool moment.
The film is absurd. The film is littered with insane choices and visuals. But I would say out of the Czech films we have consumed, from Lemonade Joe, Dinner for Adele, Tomorrow Wake Up and Scald Myself with Tea, and so on and so on, this is probably the most stripped back still out of all of that. It's still crazy, and as I said, but I felt like the storytelling, the performances, the music, the visuals, the way things were just laid out in front of us were less high energy zany than everything else we watched, and I think that's a positive. I think it works in this film's favor because it brought about a lot of laughter from me and amusement, but also a genuine form of appreciation for how they're going about this, like how are they pulling this off, where when they shove someone down a sink, I'm thinking, how did they do that effect?
Yeah.
But the way it's just played as if this isn't funny, which is very good, because the other films we've watched, a lot of the times, like, look how fucking funny this is. And that's great. That works so often. But in this case, I was just really taken with how this presents this story as if it is just a normal family drama film.
Yeah, I was thinking of, all of the weird things that are happening in this film and thinking, man, that sounds so campy, but the way it's played isn't really for camp. It is, as we just said, like, just really natural. Like, this is normal.
And
this is normal.
Yeah, that even applies at the end, where we get the wife is brought out of a cake and she's huge and they have to feed her all of this. It's still presented, it's still put forth to us in a very non-campy, non-over-the-top way. It's just very laid bare.
It felt like the end of like a, classic Grimm's fairy tale, where it's like, oh, this really absurd, punishment for the villain happens, and here it is. It just plainly is here.
And that goes with the romance as well. It has a very tender quality to it. It's a slow burn affair. There's a dramatic conceit at the center of it all, where she has to decide whether or not she's going to drown and kill this innocent
because
person.
Her family wants
because
of
her family wants to, and you have obviously it be ratcheting up the tensions of her loyalties and her love, but it all is wrapped around the conceit that she's this magical creature. And I know I'm not joking when I say this. I wonder, you know what film I thought about the most when watching this? Out of all the films we've ever covered on our podcast, do you have a guess what film I am thinking of?
Is it... I'm going to feel really silly if this is not right. Is it Black Annie?
No, I was thinking no.
I feel silly.
Why Black Annie?
The Moonquake Lake thing?
Oh, no. I was thinking of Lady in the Water.
Okay.
Where Lady in the Water by M. Night Shyamalan was trying to capture what this is. Like this modern day fairy tale about these water creatures,
like a bedtime story,
and this love between a mortal man and a woman from the water.
Was that a love story? Lady in the Wake?
Lady in the Water. Yeah.
Lady in the Water.
Kind of. It's kind of hard to tell. Kind of. But that's the thing. It's trying to do so much, but it doesn't really go there. Like, that movie, was that a love story? I don't know. Paul Giamatti seemed involved in a way, but that's the thing. I thought of that movie a lot because it's trying to reach for the things that this movie did with little to seemingly no effort. It felt so in just like step rhythm with every beat of this movie. It was like bam, bam, bam. It was hitting everything it needed to hit.
It didn't need like exposition scenes, really.
And the way it did go about them were very entertaining and very much like we're on the back foot of the exposition. Like, they just go about their lives like, this is our lives. This is it. And we have to fill it in and be like, oh, this is how oh, okay. So they give us the rules. And then we have to think about, like, okay, but what are the rules? And we're like, oh, I see. Oh, I see. And it very much plays like that. It's not a perfect film. I don't love all of it, but I definitely makes me have even more of a desire to see Czech films, and ones of a different ilk than the ones we have been watching. This, I feel like, is a step in a different direction than the like the area we've been dwelling
Well,
in.
I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first one that isn't directed by Lipsky that we've covered.
Tomorrow I'll wake up and scold myself with tea wasn't an Ulrich Lipsky
No,
movie.
okay,
That was a
sure.
different filmmaker. But a
Okay.
lot of the same faces pop up, so I can understand the confusion there. And the style of filmmaking, the 70s comedy fare.
Yeah, we've seen so many of these types of film with the same sense of humor that I honestly don't know if, like, just most films from this era in this country are like that, or if we're just, like, pinpointing on it.
And we see the same actors doing similar shticks in them, or very, around that. We have, from what I could see, just from
right?
two faces that we have enjoyed in the past.
Our favorite boy, Milos Kopecki, and I don't know the other one name, but the one that becomes human first, right?
Yeah, he's been in pretty much most of the Ulrich Lipsky movies ever. Like, he was the bartender in Lemonade Joe.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go. I knew that he was in the T one. He was one of the Nazis, right?
Yep, that's right. And again, that was not even an Ulrich Lipsky movie, but yeah, he's a Vladimir, by the way. He's a Vladimir Minsky.
I had a look at his
to that regard.
I read shortly his Wikipedia page, and, like, he's apparently one of the big iconic Czech actors or entertainers.
I actually looked up a bit about, so to give more proper context for those people, who are these two actors in relation to this film, go more into their characters and what we thought of their performances a bit more. So we said the Vladimir, he plays one of the sprites who becomes human.
Yes, so he's one of the servant characters. So the servant characters, and sometimes in the film they, change up the word and say that they're straight up slaves.
And in quotation, uncle, sometimes as well, like uncle, when she's like trying to be like alias, like he's my uncle.
So our female lead, is the female romantic lead of the film. She is the daughter of one of these three servants of the Excellency. And obviously one of them's her father, the other two are her uncles, and this character is one of her uncles.
And he is very blue collar.
Yeah.
And he's very nefarious as well. Like, he's not a good person, I would say. He's very bloodthirsty, but he just doesn't have the opportunity to strike that. And then he's played by Vladimir, and he has a very interesting look as an actor, because he has this he has this very certain type of round face and long neck or something, where
I feel like he could play like a mafioso.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He's a guy that could play anything, because he can be the schlub, the blue-collar guy, the bartender, the butler, or he could be a lord. Like, he has this ability where you put a little mustache on him and it's like, oh, I believe this is a gentleman. But then,
very versatile look, now that you mention it. Yeah.
Very versatile look. Even in this film, where we see him as a cook, or when he's like little fisherman hat on, like little hat on, and I'm like, oh god, this man, he just constantly has this ever-changing look. But he's definitely one that I always I undervalue as an actor in these movies, because he's often given these supporting roles where he is, supporting. He's giving the movie the little extra flavoring, but he never, he very rarely gets to have the standout moments like our other favorite, played by Milos Kopecki, who is the main bad guy of this movie.
He's the Excellency that they work for.
And his performance is a very different style of villainous compared to some of the other ones we've seen of him. It's less manic, I would say. I would say this one, it's more human. The other versions of his villainy we've seen are much more cartoon characters, which are enjoyable, but I don't know if you agree, but this one, if you removed the whole water sprite thing, he feels like a mafioso guy who's losing the grip on the empire, and
Yeah,
he's trying everything to get his daughter's, get his family's respect. Where's my wife?
he's very exasperated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, we're familiar enough with him as an actor. What did you feel about his performance in this one? Do you feel similar to me, where it was a little bit more stripped back and more natural than some of the other ones,
Yeah, I
or?
mean, as much as I love him doing cartoony, like we mostly call him Hogo Fogo outside of the podcast, which was his villain character in Lemonade Joe. Yeah, he it worked well for this film. He wasn't he is the antagonist of the film, but for a lot of it, he's not with the main crew. He's off basically being berated for running his kingdom poorly.
He's a POV character for us for good portions of it too, where weirdly enough, because we're following him, we feel oddly sympathetic towards him, even
Yeah.
though he wants to do awful things to humans.
Yeah, yeah, we do follow him for quite a lot of it, and a lot of the comedy does come from, again, him just playing it really straight. I think the biggest laugh I had was the scene where he gave his ID, which was, we can talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, for a lot of it, his wife almost seems like the more front and center antagonist, because she's the really pushy one. She feels like the naggy wife who goes right into the faces of
The elitist,
the
too.
elitist, yeah, goes right into their faces, turns them into weird objects, and has the sort of comical punishment for most of the film.
The film very, very clearly illustrates the dangers of this water sprite race and this family strain in particular, but the thread of the movie is understandable, and you totally get why they are fighting tooth and nail, because it's about their existence, their house, this place that they live and operate out of, and it's their home, is getting threatened by the authorities, who are going about it in a very reasonable manner because they're regular human beings. And here's this house with all of this water stuff, and it's not healthy. So you have this conflict in which we are following Milos's character, and although he's meeting up with people who are worse than him and less caring than him and don't give a shit about him, and so you have this weird affinity towards him. You start to feel for him, and I thought his performance was even more part of that, because you see him and he does come across as like an actual family man. Like he's doing
Mm.
this for the family, but you also have the clear villain tendencies, the clear shouting, the "I'll
And
kill you" stuff.
he's got shitloads of human souls.
But yeah, yes, exactly. But he really, he really does have that thing we love about mafia stories, where it's like, oh, we're following, Tony Soprano, we're
The
following,
boss.
we're following the boss, where, oh, they're a family man, but they kill people, like, how do you feel about that? And we're spending this time watching him have to do awful things or potentially awful things, but yet
Yeah.
you don't want him to lose. And
And
I thought it was really well played. Like obviously he's my favorite because I love that actor, but it goes beyond that. I thought he was the standout thing of this movie because it didn't feel as strongly that the film was trying to make him this just purely ruthless boss character.
Yeah, you do have depth to him. I didn't really compare it in my head until just now, but a lot of elements from this are also kind of in Oscar, where, yeah, you're following that sort of head of the family, and he's got his, I think like main three goons that he talks to and has a bit of a dynamic with. And there's a whole plot about like the daughters and suitors and stuff like that, and it takes place around a house.
I learned some information about the actor Milos, his real, like his life. I was looking up this movie. I was looking up reviews. I was just seeing what the vibe is. Letterboxd has bios of actors. I was curious. I was curious of how much of because on Letterboxd they tell you the percentage of how much of a person's career you've consumed, like of their movies. So, if you log their films, how much of percentage-wise have you actually watched of that said stuff? So, like, I've watched 100% of this filmmaker because they've only made 5 films and I've seen them all. And with actors, how much? And with him, I've seen 1% because he made 210 films.
I do recall occasionally going, basically whenever we do a Czech film or watch a Czech film, seeing his Wikipedia page, and there's just a lot of films listed
He's
there.
probably one of the biggest actors, because he did a lot of dramatic stuff too. He did Baron von
there's
Munchausen, which is like a film that transcends just the Czech thing. That's taught in film schools.
I think there's even like a statement about like one of the most prominent working Czech actors of the latter half of the 20th century or something.
But they had a bio on Letterboxd that I found rather interesting, and it really contextualized a lot of stuff. You know, he was a working actor. He worked in Germany for a period of time, then the war, and then he lost his mother in Auschwitz because she was Jewish, and then he was in a camp.
Yeah, I remember reading
during all of that,
that he was in a camp.
And then, yeah, he had what we call bipolar disorder or something variant of that, but, you know, manic depressive back in the day because of all of that stuff. And he he leaned into playing these type of power figures, these authority roles, these villain leches type of stuff to really kind of, you know, like work through
Horace
a lot.
Badman.
Well, yeah, work through a lot of the kind of horrors of the world he saw, but bring it in a very, you know, him type of way. And it makes a lot of sense. It's just one of those things where it's just like he's always someone that I'm happy to see, and you know, he had a very interesting life. Like he made, you know, he was a part of a politically biased documentary about, you know, these things. He spoke out at a certain point about communist regime. You know, he was all over the place, because we talked about with Lemonade Joe was like, what's the political stance of the movie? Because it's a movie made by many different people. Like, this person was a communist during this time, this one wasn't, this one speaks out, this one does, yeah, that type of thing. And I was just wanting to bring that out because he's one of those people who has a really varied life, but he brings those experiences. Like, he's an actor where he's just, you can tell he's lived a life. It's all etched on his face. And in this movie, he's got like a fun little hairpiece that's dyed, and I had a chuckle at seeing him.
Yeah, I remember when we did the Einstein film, I was like, oh man, he's so underused in that.
So I really did enjoy the central romance, and I liked our two leads. I liked the lawyer, and
he had a lot of very funny personality quirks, and his whole living context. There's just a lot going on there that felt very, this is a Czech film.
And I liked her. What was her name again?
I think it was Jane.
Yeah, Jane or Jana. You know, but she had amazing outfits.
I like that shirt with the fish.
I like that shirt with the fish. I liked her like power suit that she was wearing. Like, there's this one bit where they're having like a little brunch thing near the, you know, Riviera or whatever, and they're, you know, drinking coffees or whatever, and she's like just wearing this fucking blazer with like this power suit outfit, and I'm just like, damn, she's serving looks. And then the fish outfit, like all of these outfits, I'm like, she's got to, like, every scene would cut to her, she's in some new extravagant outfit, and I was just like, oh, I'm eating this up. But she was really charming. Like, as an actress, I thought she really was electrifying. I just wanted to follow her more, and that's probably my biggest, like,
that's kind of what I was thinking too. Yeah,
I don't know if it's my biggest complaint, but I kind of wish the movie was more from her POV. I wish it was kind of like, as much as I enjoy Milos and as much as I enjoy the lawyer, I kind of wanted her to be the central focus a lot more than what it actually ended up being.
The film feels like, she's the main protagonist, but so much of the film is her family that it almost kind of feels like a bit of an afterthought. Like, there are some stretches where it's like, oh, we haven't really seen her for a while. And then other stretches were like, oh, she hasn't been in a scene with the lawyer for a while.
I was going to say, a huge downside of the romance is so much of it isn't on the screen, because so much of the time they're having their own individual plots outside of each other.
Yeah, and very quickly you get to the point where, like, the family matter stuff is interfering with that relationship, and it's on a down point. So you only get really like 2 or 3 scenes where they're like, you know, completely happy together, and then it's, you know, oh, you lied to me, like you're not doing this thing for me. Well, make it up for me by doing this. And yeah, there's always this like kind of negative tint to a lot of their scenes after a pretty early point in their romance.
I believe that they could still tell the story the way they did, but have the two be engaged in the story together a lot
Mm,
more and still have it work, and even bring up a lot more of the comedy, but also the serious dramatic irony of she knows the thing and he doesn't know the thing, and
mm.
how much is he going to realize that she's a part of the
Yeah,
thing,
they're having one conversation but saying two different things.
and how much is she going to let him continue on, and how much is she going to sabotage his, pursuits? Because that is a part of the film as well, where she helps him and then she fucks him over because she can't let him get too close. But they had natural chemistry, those two actors, those two characters, and basically my main complaint is give me more of the thing that worked. Like that
Mm.
worked. Give me more of that in the movie. I wanted more, and not just need, but I
Yeah,
desperately wanted more.
I guess, yeah, I was so conflicted about that. It's like, did I like the main characters and their romance because, in spite of the fact that they didn't have much going on, I feel like there just needed to be more for me to confidently say that I liked them. But I did like them. Like the lawyer guy I mentioned before, like his quirks and like his family, like all that stuff's really funny.
Well, how about you break that apart, start going into what those things are and what did you love about them? Because they are they are bizarre, but also very homely. Like this is how it is.
Yeah, so similar to how we learn about the female lead's home life, we learn about our male lead's home life, where he, lives with his mother, who's this very domineering character who keeps dragging him along to her weird and surprisingly apt scientific ventures, while also simultaneously telling him, like, you need to get married, and the former interferes with him actively trying to solve the latter. She gets involved in the main plot in very funny, coincidental ways, with another very iconic character from the other house, the dog Lord. Um, but yeah, the main character, he's a lawyer, and the film plays on lawyer quirks, where like very frequently he will refer to something and say that, like, from a legal standpoint, blah blah blah.
Or when we go to his office and we have his work colleagues who are
Mm.
very, like, you have the boss guy who keeps coming into some bizarre situation and tutting and shaking his head and giving the wag of the finger and then walking off.
Yeah, eventually you
And
get.
never trying to learn the full context of what's going on. He's just kind of like, well,
You know
I've
what?
seen this.
I need to
What a
watch.
shame.
I need to watch the film again to really appreciate that character. 'Cause I think he kind of went over my head until the scene of when he walked into the office, and our main character, for plot reasons we'll get into, has turned into a fish and is in the process of turning back into a man. And his response is just like, always with these jokes with you, and just walks away.
Yeah, I like the bit where he was there and he was just in his, I guess, a shirt with no pants or whatever. And it's just like, I'm not going to ask. And just walks out.
That was the final punchline, I think, for that character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was awesome. I enjoy the mother, or his mother. You brilliantly summed it up. There's this fun play of the character archetype she is, which is the doting mother, the domineering mother, the one who's like, you gotta get married. She's the mother from Secret Life of Walter Mitty, like that type. But then she's also like pretty much a Nobel Prize winning scientist type. Like, if you followed her film, it would be about how she's probably going to find some cure for some disease or like some invention she makes or
she's
something.
studying how to make people turn into fish.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful how they mix these things together, because we know that first type so well. I could list you 50 movies we've done on this podcast where that type of mother character exists, or a variant of it. I was even thinking of Main Hunar or something, where you have
the same one from Enchantium.
Yeah, exactly. And
I,
we have so many of them, and
can't.
You have this element of her character where it's like she's got her own quote unquote plot happening that we aren't privy to, but it does keep intersecting with the ones we are privy to.
Yeah,
I just think that's so awesome.
Even a backstory element.
Yeah.
I can't say that I'm related to someone that's like this character, but like the way that she is assertive, and the way that she says a lot of things assertively reminds me of a couple of relatives I have in Poland where I think even I sometimes do impressions of them around the house where there's just a very enunciated way that they'll say things. Like I remember the one quote that I always remember is there was one time I went to Poland for the first time in like 4 or 5 years, but as a teenager, it felt like a million years. And my aunt, I remember hearing her enter the house while I was like, in the middle floor, and I just hear her saying like, "Gdzie jest mój Bartek?" Like, where is my Bartek? And like the delivery of that line from 2006 in my real life reminded me so much of so many of the things that this woman was saying in the film.
I love that. I appreciate hearing that, and I really did like the scene in which he finds a fish in the kitchen area or that area, and it's our main lead female character's turned herself into a fish to not be seen or
Yeah.
hide, and he accidentally drops it in like the blender thing, and like, oh no!
I thought that was it for her. Like, oh my god, our female lead's gone.
I read a review, I think it was on Letterboxd, was like, my heart sank when he dropped her in, and I'm like, so did mine. I was like, and I loved when she transformed back and she just had a little bit of it on her face.
Yeah. It was like a blender.
They didn't want to cover her all in it, which they should have, but in a weird way, it was kind of funnier that they just smacked a little bit on her cheek of just this cream. Of his pinky cream. I really like that. Where do you want to go from there? What are some of the other stuff you want to...
I mentioned Lord.
Yes.
The dog. I really like the dog in this film.
Yes.
He's just a, rambunctious little troublemaker who just consistently makes things worse for our main characters.
I love how this movie goes about that type of comedy of errors and pratfalls and like, oh, here we go again. This actually pairs up nicely as like a contrast but similarities to the last film we did, Delicatessens, where it has like that, oh, here's the scene where it's like, oh, the woman's got bad eyesight and she's pouring her coffee, but the other guy's like really skilled at acrobatic stuff, so he's getting it all in perfectly. And it's like, oh, that's kind of sweet. And then you get this movie where it has its version of these kind of big set piece things, but it's also like, oh no, the thing kind of isn't happening, but kind of is happening. And I thought that was something that really stood out in this movie too. And again, the way it's played is very casual. It's very casual, the filmmaking of this. There's never like any showy moments. There's never any like, here's a big ha funny, or like, look at this like very abstract camera move that we have here, like crazy image. Even the crazy images we get, they're just very much framed as any other in the movie, and you're like, okay, fair enough. It kind of like numbs you to like, oh, there's a big woman now who's emerged from a cake where the flower had ears. That's like, oh yeah, we say it out loud. It sounds so
I remember
goofy.
Literally, I finished watching the film and I was telling my brother about it, and I was trying to put it all into words made it sound like I watched the craziest, wackiest thing ever, and he had like so many questions, and it just watching the film, it all did just come together.
What was something you said? There was like a plot element you said we would get into, or you wanted to flag up.
That was why the lawyer turned into a fish.
Oh yes. The whole sequence of events of that.
While he's trying to get to work, his mum's like, nope, stay here for a few minutes. I need to inject you with the current version of my turn into a fish serum. And he's like, oh, okay, just please hurry up, Mum. Hoi hoi.
Then it works.
And it worked too soon. It's like, it won't work till evening, and it works like 10 minutes later.
That was such a... There are these absolutely bananas lines in here where they just say it as if it's so, like, nothing. Like, the whole, come on, darling, I'm going to inject you with the fish DNA, basically. All right, Mom, all right, here we go. And just questions of, like, would you love me if I'm a fish? And you're like... Yeah, I guess I would. Have you ever turned into a tortoise? Nah, I've never thought about doing that. It's not my thing. It's like... Okay.
And they had these like tender conversations at points that are about absurd things. Like it's near the end of the film. Like the two leads are about to have sex. They're in bed together talking, and they're looking at the goldfish, and she's talking about like, yeah, I used to turn into a fish and play hide and seek with them all the time.
But it's see, yeah, you're giggling about that, but I thought that was like a really like genuinely touching
It
moment where it's
was, but
like,
it was so funny too.
yeah. Here's the thing, yeah.
It's in line with what the film was
Yeah,
doing.
but yes, it is. But also, it's a weird thing of I didn't read until just now, I guess, as like that was a funny thing. I actually took it as like a very like sweet because it's hers like reflecting back on the things she's going to no longer be able to do.
It's both. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah, it
mean.
is. It is. But it is that thing where again, not just fantasy genre, but where you have these kind of these type of stories where even if they play comedic, you have those tender moments where it's like, oh, this fan like like this cool thing I will be able to do, I won't be able to do, and now I'm reflecting. But the funny part is when they're about to have sex, and she's like, "Oh, right," and then they put over the little scarf or whatever over the
Yeah.
bowls of the fish on
No,
watching
but
them.
the lines like that, it reminded me of recently of the time we're recording, we watched an anime called Assassination Classroom, very popular
Mm,
one. And the whole thing about that is like it's one part a story about a class where the students are emotionally getting, involved with our teacher. Sounds wrong, but he's teaching them life lessons and they're really appreciative of him, they're growing to love him. And then another part of the story is, oh, they have to kill this guy within a year. So you're mixing these two very disparate elements where one's very genuine, one's very serious and kind of weird. And it
yes.
creates this very weird sort of tone for the whole series, which is funny to look at. And that's kind
It's
of what that scene was reminding me
it's
of.
so hilarious you brought that up because yes, Bartek and I with a group of friends watch animes. We've mentioned this before on the pod, but weirdly enough, the last one we just watched, Shadow's House, came to my mind when watching this as well.
Hmm.
Where that's the one about a schooling, like a weird, like Victorian era boarding house, bizarro
It's a weird sort
world.
of like mansion family, but they're not really.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of intrigue and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of like, here are the rules and what do you got to do, and if you don't do this, there's going to be this like this supernatural incursion upon you, and then go on and on and on it goes. And we have like a perky, female character who is like naive but knows how it works and kind of does, all of that. And I was thinking of that, and um, I'm trying to recall what are other things within this film I want to really get into and talk about here. Oh, I enjoyed greatly that the actor for the lawyer guy has clearly never rowed a boat in his life. Uh, they have a whole thing where he's like, "Oh, I always row and I love
5
this."
a.m. every morning. That's when a lot of the assassination attempts happen.
Yep, and well, that poor actor. He tried. He tried. He was struggling. Clearly.
Wasn't there at one point where he was like rowing backwards, like, oh, whoops, wasn't meant to do that?
Yeah, yeah. This bit where he's trying to splash her with the paddle as well. That was a nice little touch. Like, oh, you can clearly tell he was just doing that on purpose to because it was fun, and
Hmm.
you could tell the actress was like, oh, okay, like it was an actual real. If it came across as a real moment rather than like a scripted. Like now he does a cute little splash the paddle at her and get the water. No, you tell the actor was like, oh, this would be cool to do in this like romance scene, and it was a good moment. I'm thinking about it still. It's like one of the key images in my mind of their romance. I thought one of the funniest scenes in the movie was when he drowned the first time, and you get like all of the people, and you get like this little kid
Yeah.
giving input and wrong input, and people are like, "Shut up, shut the fuck up." He wasn't even a part of the sinister. He was just like some random bystander kid, and he's like
Yeah.
leaning in, like he's physically like in the space.
Yeah, it's
and
like
he's
all
just,
the other
giving
beachgoers,
advice.
yeah.
He's just giving advice. Oh man, it was so expertly done. What are some other things you want to talk about when it comes to how to drown this poor lawyer doctor figure?
Yeah, we mentioned before that the one of the magics that they can do is you point their wand at a fellow water sprite and just say like the object that they can turn into. And they
Mm.
do a lot of fun things where the wand is malfunctioning. And so they turn into the thing, but like one of their body parts will still be on it. So there's like, I'm turning you into a sausage for a little while and the nose is still there. Or you mentioned before the bag of flour where the ears were still there. Like they had a lot of fun with that, but the very first one, They didn't do the body part thing with that one, but it was really funny because like the domineering, mother of the house, the Excellency's wife, breaks something, gets angry, and then says, "Clean that up." And she turns one of them into a rag, and then the daughter has to clean with the rag, and she apologizes to the rag, saying, "Sorry, Dad." It's just a really funny, really serious, sad moment, but so funny because he's a rag.
Yeah. Sorry, Dad. These movies, they always have like one like moment like that will be forever burned into my brain, like just one like truly like I don't know, off the cuff insane thing, like Gentleman, I Killed Einstein. The man, like one of our lead characters, has a little kitten in his coat pocket. Like, and it's like that's always been in my mind.
The classic fiddle being eaten and the guy being sad.
Lemonade Joe. There's so many. Each one of them.
Adela, the beard pillow.
The beard pillow, and or the salt and pepper working at the end is like an insane visual. There's each one of them. Each one of them has what I will call a little treat for me. A little treat. I loved, again, the visuals, the acting of when they go underwater and then they have like this filter effect over of like, here's what water looks like, and
really cool wavy effect.
And there are these times where it's like when they have the lawyer under there, and he's obviously physically acting, but then there are these times it's like, oh no, he has to swim up now, like, and you're like, what have they done here? They've composite or layered or
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, how did they do that scene?
How did they do that scene? Yeah, there's some
scenes. Because Milos
Kopecky
is just like
standing there.
He's just standing there normal, and
it doesn't feel like it's a composition like they've post done it, because you know how you can always tell, especially in older movies, still even now, when it's like, oh, okay, they've layered this on afterwards because it's like a different color or like a different grain or something. You know what I mean by that? Like it's always like, okay,
it's like what in that scene,
now we got a green screen effect of the 80s, or like, oh, now we've like done some trickery
in that scene when they're leaving that pool of water and going up the stairs. That was the one moment where I'm like, oh, I can see what they did here to make him wet and him not.
He's going up some steps.
Yeah, he's going up some steps that are not inside the tank, whereas the guy is in the tank.
It was the Truman Show.
Yeah, that's the only moment really where I noticed it. But even then, I'm like, yeah, the camera's framed really well. Like, I have to look pretty closely to see the edge of that tank.
Look, I'm not saying Peter Weir, the director of the Truman Show, watched this movie and got inspired, but because that happens in the Truman Show at the end when he like hits the edge of it and he walks up the stairs, but like you see like it's the water's there, like you get a very similar effect. But we know you get the full like, oh, here's what they're doing, like obviously, but it's a artifice. But each one of these films that we've done, I've watched some more Czechoslovakian movies and you like outside of the comedy realm as well. I mentioned it before, but the Adventures of Baron von Munchausen, which stars Milos Kopecky as the Baron, that film is basically a silent movie. Like, it is dialogue, but it's mainly the visuals. And that was from the 60s, I want to say. And we've watched some 60s and 70s and early 80s. And from a handful of directors, different ones, and I just got to say, like, the Czech film industry at that time, during these times, really going top notch at the craft of like, this is okay, what tricks can we use of filmmaking to make this better, because they don't need to do this stuff, like, why can't he just come out with his suit wet? Like, wouldn't that be easier for you as a filmmaker? But no, they make it like this, as you mentioned, this rule that goes unsaid for a very long time in the movie. Until that one moment. And that's like, at best, you could have a good chuckle, but not like a belly laugh. But think about the fucking painstaking things you have to think of for the rest of the movie to make that good chuckle work. They don't have to. They could have just had Milos Kopecky just come out of a body of water wet, but they have to think of this stuff. And yeah, we saw the effect there, but this movie, they keep coming at it with these effects. Like, okay, now we're going to put him in a sink, and you see the pipe underneath balloon up. And it's like, okay, they're in that now. It's like, but how did they do that effect? It's
and all the while paying off like minor lines. Like in that scene, Mila Kunicki thinks that the lawyer character is one of these two, kind of a lower class, dumber water sprites that have been sent over to marry off some of his daughters or nieces. And thinking that he's one of the lower class guys. Like, that's the one time where he really acknowledges, like, oh, yeah, I guess you guys don't have manners. And this is clearly an example of that I'm seeing.
Oh, those two dumb gangster guys and how they get dispensed with in this film. The one who gets his foot cut off by a scythe.
Yep.
No, please don't call an ambulance. They'll give me a blood transfusion. No, that actor's face. He had such a child who realized they've done something wrong reaction to like, oh no.
I liked how they made those two guys look like outsiders. They almost seemed like, oh, people from, good Texas boys coming over to our community.
They come across as people who are aliens who are emulating what people dress like.
Yeah.
Because they are such exaggerated
One's got
things.
a bit of like a cowboy thing going on with his limp, and the other like seems to dress above his station.
Yeah, the shoes are too tight. Damn it. Damn it. They're David Byrne in True Stories, where it's like he kind of come across as like a normal person, but he's like, this is what people in Texas dress like, and he's got a big hat. I loved it. Yeah, I would recommend this movie to everyone and
For
anyone.
sure.
This is very accessible in terms of like the content of it. As we said at the beginning, you can find it online, but out of all of the Czech films we've watched, I think this is the one where you can show this to someone and they'll obviously be taken aback at first by like the inherent insanity, but I think this is probably the most like easygoing one we've consumed. Like, I think this is the one where it's just like you could show this to a kid, to an adult, and they will all have like a solid time with it. I know I say this from time to time on the podcast, and I don't know how often it, actually is true or not, or whatever the case is. This is one in which I think your mum would like it.
Yeah, probably.
I think your mum would like this one.
Maybe, yeah.
And I think our friend Will would like this one.
Oh, of course Will would love it.
I think he would like it because of all of the rules. He likes movies with like these like intricate little rules and like how they break them.
Recommend this one to Will.
But this is one where it's just like, we did a Bollywood movie recently too, and
we were also talking in that episode about how so many things were effortless.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about like, man, I would watch the Bollywood version of this movie, the insane musical numbers of this. I would watch the musical version of this, but I was just watching this and I was like, I think Bartek, out of all the Czech films we've watched, I think your mum would like this one the most, because I don't know your mum well enough, I guess, but I always think of like the other ones as like too silly.
Yeah,
I imagine your mum chuckling and going, oh, so silly.
I showed her Lemonade Joe and she thought it was alright.
Yeah.
She was amused by a couple of things in it, but yeah, clearly didn't love it as much as we do. But maybe this one. Be nice if we could find one with really good subtitles.
Yeah, well,
the ones we had
who knows?
were a bit
Maybe
off.
we have to look at physical media. Who knows?
Yeah, well, we probably have to for one of the films on the list.
These movies, a lot of them, I mentioned it last time, big round of applause for, the Czech film industries, because they restore these, they put these out there, they're out there to find, and yet, they're from, decades ago now, but you can watch them, you can find them, and many times you see the little thing at the start, it's like, this has been lovingly restored, and they look great. Like, this looked good. This looked good.
It did look pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, another the Cinderella one that we have on the list, that one's a restoration one.
But... this is a recommendation. It's not my favorite of the Czech films, but it's definitely one where it's got me interested more in seeing ones that are different to the usual breed. Like, I'm now a bit more hungry for the ones that aren't as overtly silly. Although, please give me more silly ones. I have that one in my watch list of the cat that wears glasses. There's a whole movie about a cat that wears glasses and does fucked up shit. But yeah, I recommend. Bartek, you recommend, of
For
course.
sure, recommend. Yeah, at the end of last episode, when you recommended one of the Czech films, like, oh, thank God, I was really in the mood for one, and
Yeah.
I was glad that it was a good one.
It's a great one. Thank you for the recommendation. And yes, people, if you are aware of any other Czech films we should watch, whether new or old or whenever, I mean, I'm open to, other decades, not just the 70s, of course, but if there's versions of these films we can watch with subtitles, that would be awesome. I know that's a lot of things to think of, but yeah, just something really to put out there is we're always wanting more, and we love this. And yes, all of you can recommend movies to us, any movies you like. We add them to the list, and we eventually get around to them. But we've just done one of the listening people's. Now it is Bartek's time to pitch a movie our way.
Yes. I'm recommending a film that's a bit more recent. So a lot of the films that come out recent years that go into cinema, I haven't really seen too many. I haven't actually been to the cinema all that much in the past handful of years. But I do hear about films every now and then, whether it's like the awards season or just, reviewers on YouTube talking about them. And there are a couple that I keep in the back of my head, like, I need to check that out at some point. And I think this is one that I have, like, at the top of that list. Like, I really want to check that one out. This one sounds like it's really good, and it's about something that I'm interested in. And I know you've seen it before. I've checked on your letterbox just to double check, and it's a film you like. It is the 2019 film Marriage Story.
Oh, Noah Baumbach is in the house. Oh, boy, yes, starring everyone's favorite people. Oh, Bartek. Oh, I can't wait to talk about Ray Liotta in that movie. Oh, that's all I'll say. Ray Liotta and Alan Alda, fucking, Laura Dern. Laura Dern is amazing in that. But we'll talk about that in Marriage Story.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've seen Adam Driver in too much outside of like Star Wars. I'm actually kind of struggling to think of something.
Yeah, he's a working actor, but he does a lot of stuff now. But yeah, this is one of the big ones. So we'll be talking about Marriage Story next time.
Really
I always
keen.
think of Alex from The Contrarians. Hates it.
Oh, really?
Loathes it. And I've listened to his reasonings. Well, I've only seen this movie one time, so who knows how I'll feel this next time. But, sometimes you hear people's, like, reasons for not liking a movie, and you aren't necessarily like, I don't agree with that, but you're more like, didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this fares on a rewatch for me and a first-time watch for you. As you said, you haven't seen too much of Adam Driver. And, Scarlett Johansson, she's an actress that, obviously she does a lot of blockbuster fare, but, she's done quite a lot of different and bold and dramatic work throughout her career. So it'll be nice to see that side of her as well. I can't recall. Can you remind me? Have we ever had a Scarlett Johansson appearance on the pod?
Was she Lucy?
Yes, of course. She was Lucy.
Yeah.
So this would be very... Although she has short hair in this one, like she did in Lucy, it'll be very different to Lucy.
Well, this one isn't a French film, so
it's not a French film. That's the difference. So thank you all so much for listening into our discussion, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and just hearing out two people gush over Czech cinema. We went from French cinema to Czech cinema, and now we're back to the US, baby. So you'll be here with us next time. We hope to hear about, a movie where stuff happens, marriages, and stories.
My last American pick of the year, too.
Oh, and you're looking forward to your next foreign one, I'm sure.
And maybe my last pick of the year? Maybe, I don't know.
Question mark, please. Bartek's going to take a sick break one week. We'll see.
Ryan can't do next week because reason.
Yeah, please. We won't get into the reasons of that. Just listen to the last 4 episodes where I keep prodding it. But Bartek, thank you so much for sitting across from me yet again. And me, I'm glad to be here talking about movies with you.
Same here, actually, funnily enough.
Thank you.
Don't know if you believe me, but yeah, it's true.
I believe you.
Believe. Oh, that's like the guy that doesn't know basketball in German.
Yeah, and he knows that, he believes that Anne Frank would have been
a believer.
She would have been if it wasn't for those pesky Germans.
Yeah, that Houston kid's really funny.